Hello YouTube preppers, this is the Comms Prepper, and I just got back from Ham Radio Outlet picking up some parts for my next radio project and playlist here on the channel. And that's the installation of an ICOM ID51 Alpha mobile radio in the new car. The old Toyota, 12 years old, hit end of life, and we got a good deal on a second-hand Nissan Frontier pickup truck, but the truck's not complete until it has some communications equipment installed. So that's what this playlist series is going to be, documenting the installation of an ICOM D-Star radio in this pickup truck, the 2015 Nissan Frontier. I'm going to show you some of the tools that I use for doing a mobile radio installation and how I like to break it up into, let's say, modules. The first thing I like to do, of course, is get the power from the battery through the Firewall where we're going to install the radio in the vehicle. So the plan is to put the control head up here, and I went to Amazon and ordered the dashboard tools so I can pry things apart and get in there without damaging the plastic here. So these are those tools there. I picked them up for $5 and I'll put a link down below, but they're very handy when you do mobile radio installations. So the plan is the control head will go here, and the body of the radio where the microphone connects and the control cable and power will all go down here. So the speaker will be down here, the microphone will plug in here. We'll put the microphone clip here, and then the control head will sit up here just above this tray. We're going to bring the power in directly from the battery using some Anderson power pole connectors and materials. Come through the Firewall, back below the floorboard, and bring the power out right down here. And I'm also going to install a little bulkhead connector for Anderson power pole connectors for accessories on the side. Not quite sure where I'm going to put this, but that's the plan. So I'll go ahead and brake here and we'll get under the hood and I'll show you how I'm going to do the power. That's going to be the first part of this video, is getting the power from the battery into the passenger compartment. The second video will cover the installation of the antenna. So let's go out and get under the hood. First thing I like to do when doing a mobile radio installation is to make sure the battery connections are free of corrosion and debris. I use this plumber's tool for copper pipe. Works quite well. I take the connections apart, clean everything up. For this installation I opted to use a pre-manufactured waterproofed fuse assembly made by Powerworks. I picked this up at Ham Radio Outlet today for $15. It's 10 gauge wire, and at the end of it is a 45 amp Anderson power pole connector, so that's plenty of wire and plenty of connector to power the ICOM ID51 Alpha radio, which pulls a little bit above 13 amps, I think. I'll check and put a link down below. We have 10 gauge wire. We're going to come across here, tie wrap it to that wire bundle there. We're going to come over here to the other side of the vehicle, and down in there, I hope I can zoom in on it, is a nice rubber boot where the wiring harness enters the vehicle. We're going to use an X-Acto knife there and cut a little X just to the left of the wiring bundle. Bring the wiring into the passenger compartment and over where we're going to mount the radio. And when we're done with that, we'll go ahead and make sure everything's tie wrapped up correctly. And I'll use this black silicone to seal that down there to make sure no water gets in there. And I'll also leave some excess cable there to ensure that there's a drip loop before it passes through the Firewall in case water does get on the cable. So we'll leave a little excess there. And also on this end, when I terminate the other side of the cable, I'll put a good 5 or 6 inch loop into this cable and tie wrap that up before I terminate it to the fuse assembly, so in the future if I ever have to replace the connector, I have some slack to work with. So I won't make this guitar string tight. We'll leave a little slack in there for future servicing and replacement of connectors. So I'll take a pause here, we'll get this terminated, everything tie wrapped up, and get the power into the vehicle, and that will conclude video 1 for the new playlist series of installing an ICOM ID51 Alpha D-Star radio in a 2015 Nissan Frontier pickup truck. I'll be right back, guys. Now I'll break from this process as I hit certain milestones. One of the things I like to do when using Anderson power pole connectors that are external to the vehicle or outside is, in addition to using the proper crimp tool, I also like to hit that connector with some solder to make sure we don't get any corrosion between the dissimilar metals there, so that will ensure that we have a good electrical connection once we get this all set up. So I'll go ahead and put the housing on there, connect it to the fuse assembly. We'll tie wrap everything up, we'll put a little bit of loop in there so we have some slack in the future, and work our way towards the Firewall. Another tip is don't be cheap with the tie wraps. Here I have 2. I want to make sure I have a firm connection. This is a vehicle, it's going to be moving, and if you use a single tie wrap, that can create a fulcrum or a wiggle point when the vehicle is in motion. So having two tie wraps here makes sure that this wire won't wiggle going down the road and weaken the connection there on the battery terminal. We also have the positive lead tie wrap twice down there, and we have the Anderson power pole connection now terminated on the 10 gauge wire headed to the Firewall. So we'll go ahead and put the loop in here, get this bundled up. I'll disconnect the Anderson power pole connector while I'm doing the install to make sure I don't short anything out by accident, and we'll continue to tie wrap and work our way towards the Firewall. Alright, we got things dressed up on this side of the car. We got the terminal cover back on the battery. We put a little loop of wire here so we have some slack if we ever have to do new connections in the future. Went ahead and put an Anderson power pole connector on the end of the number 10 wire that matches up with the pre-assembled fuse assembly here from PowerWorks. Number 10 wire goes towards the back by the Firewall. It's tied up with the existing wire loom that goes across the back of the vehicle. And now we're going to come down to the Firewall. Alright guys, we're through the Firewall, but we had a change of plans. Before I irreparably cut that boot down there with this X-Acto knife, I called my buddy who's a master mechanic, and he said, is that a standard or an automatic transmission in that vehicle? And I told him it's an automatic, and he said, well, typically manufacturers who have vehicles that offer both transmissions will have all the holes needed already through the Firewall. So he said, check to the left or the right of the master cylinder and see if there's a hole with a rubber plug in it that would have been used for the clutch cable. And I got down there with the flashlight a little bit closer, and just to the left of that boot was an empty hole with a plug in it, and I popped that out and put a grommet. So now we're into the Firewall, into the passenger compartment with the power for the radio installation, and we'll go ahead and tie wrap that up and put a drip loop. But I want to say thanks to my buddy N3LJA for that tip, because that saved me a lot of hassle and a lot of worry about cutting that boot there with the wiring harness for the entire engine compartment going into the passenger compartment. We have a nice neat installation just to the left of that. We'll go ahead and again put that drip loop in there, put the silicone caulking on there so it's waterproof, and the next video we'll go ahead and we'll do the antenna installation, and then the third video in this playlist will be installing the radio itself and powering it up and programming it on the D-Stars network. And as always, thank you for watching my videos and subscribing to my channel. This has been the Comms Prepper with the first video of the playlist series, installing a D-Star ID51 Alpha mobile radio in a 2015 Nissan Frontier. Thanks for watching, guys.